What are the nuggets out of camp?
What do you want to start with? You want to start with some offense, some defense?
Start with
Wind
the
me up and
offense.
set me free, man. There's plenty. There's plenty to talk about for
Let's
sure.
cut you loose on the offense.
All right, so we can start with quarterback since I was just telling you before the show that I saw your program. He did a 15-minute clip with Logan from Knoll Game Day. Y'all go check that out. They did a nice little quarterback preview of this season and then kind of the depth of the room and moving forward. DJU, that's what everybody wants to know. DJU, how is he fitting in? Can Mike Norvell, have his best season yet? How high can he take the Knolls? We've obviously seen how important a quarterback is with FSU just getting left out of the college football playoff with Jordan Travis going down. So quarterback, it's intrigue. It's what everybody wants to know. It's the most important position on the field. And now more than ever. You've always kind of said that, but back in the 90s and the 2000s, I couldn't ever imagine a quarterback going down and an undefeated team being penalized or moved out of the way for that. So it's a new world you live in. Perception is more reality than it has ever been. You have to have a perception you got a quarterback that can get it done. And thus far, coming out of camp, DJU, he is new. Like, he hasn't been here for multiple years. So, you got a guy like Brock Glenn who has looked a little bit better. He's been taking a lot of the first snaps and the different clips and things you see the first week out of camp. DJU just gets into it, seeing all the reps, just getting better and better. But as they got into pads, we're through 6 practices now. All the word coming out of practices, he's been steadily getting better and better. And then by the 6th practice, he was the best quarterback out there, had his best practice, of his time at FSU. There's a lot of talk about his inability to be accurate consistently. A whole lot of that has to do with his arm motion. A little bit of a hitch there in his giddy up that they've already shortened up. I think anybody that's watched it at his release, just in the little bit of time he spent with Mike Norvell, has been cleaned up a little bit. I think a lot of kind of his issues with inaccuracy and things like that at Clemson and Oregon State to a degree was maybe just not getting that much help from his offensive play callers. At Clemson, we all know they were hiring within. It almost felt like he was just a scapegoat at Clemson. You see them push him out, and then all of a sudden they just got worse. They did nothing but get worse. When you look at like premier games by a signal caller, playing at an above average level to win you games at replacement level. I think it was David Hale that did a big breakdown on this. DJU had 9 of those games at Clemson. Cade Klubnik has had 5. Out of like a very similar skill set. And we all saw what happened to Clemson last year. We'll see if they, go on a crazy playoff run and really Cade is the truth. But I'm really a solid believer that DJU just, was just failed by the people around him at Clemson. And then you go to Oregon State, you get this whole thing. He's a system quarterback. Jonathan Smith was just helping him out. They had such a great run game, et cetera, et cetera. But X's and O's over at 247 did a really good breakdown on it. They weren't throwing like his best routes or go routes, deep balls, using that arm, hitches, things of that nature. And those just weren't the top priority in that Jonathan Smith offense. It was he was throwing a ton of the balls that aren't really in his wheelhouse of throwing them. They had a safe offense that really relied on running the ball and things of that nature, but it didn't really tend or suit to DJU having a ton of stats and things like that. Still, he maintained a 3-to-1 touchdown ratio. And when you look at Clemson to Oregon State, it's literally the exact run to pass. So the kind of narration out there that that offense was just run. It was just play action and everybody was wide open and it still missed. Not exactly the case. Now they ran it just as much as Clemson, and he won 10 games at Oregon State. There's something to playing quarterback and winning games. Some quarterbacks put up a bunch of numbers and win 5 games, but the dude just goes out there and keeps winning. And I know that was a lot of hot air, not so much about what's going on in camp. But as far as in camp, the teams love him. And I said he's continued to get better and better and better, especially with this past practice. He's got a level of arm talent that did not exist within Jordan Travis. As much as he got better and better, he can throw those outs, those swing passes to running backs out of the backfield from the opposite hash all the way out to almost the sideline. And it's like a flick of the wrist. I mean, it literally is almost like a toss. I don't know if they're cutting out the clips where he misses, but there was one particular clip, it might have been the 5th practice, something like that, where he hit every running back. They showed the whole drill of that, from that opposite hash, and every one of them right on the money. From the 6th practice, we're hearing about just like legitimate NFL throws getting made, and making some throws that we haven't seen a Florida State, guy make in years and years. You're not hearing specifics. They're really tight-lipped about, certain routes and things like that, but you are getting that it's coming on. He's getting better and better. And I think, you might get a 3.5, 4-to-1 touchdown ratio. I don't think you're going to see this brand new DJU. But what you're going to see is Mike Norvell playing to his comforts, designing the offense around him, and really getting him comfortable early with all the different slot guys and running backs and things of that nature. And yeah, I couldn't be happier. Like on my scale of 1 to 10, on where I was like, is this thing going to work out? Is it not? Like if I was kind of half and half on how I thought DJU could be, I'm at a 10. Like I'm really happy with everything I've heard, and I think everybody else is going to be when they see him get to play against Georgia Tech and Iowa.
Well, George, you just heard this out of me because you just watched our video with Logan Robinson. So everyone be locked in over the next couple of days. We're releasing position by position breakdowns with Logan. I watched DJ Uiagalelei as much as I watched any other quarterback in the country when he was at Clemson. I was watching them almost every week. And this is what I saw was a guy that it was almost inexplicable that at the wide receiver position, Clemson went from having the best wide receiver room in the country to a very marginal one. And maybe he had a little to do with that, a little bit to do with that, not having an elite quarterback like they did with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. But most of what I remember seeing was them very much letting him down. Just so used to watching those Clemson wide receivers high point the football, outfight defenders, just be elite guys that just would go up and get the football. And they were pretty bad for a few years there. They never did have a great pass protection offensive line. They were good. They won national championships, but that was always the weakness on the team, was the offensive line when they were elite. So then he bounced back from, I believe, 9 touchdowns and 10 picks that one season with Clemson to what you were saying there, a 3-to-1 ratio, something in that range with Oregon State in his last season with Clemson. And he's a big dude, and he's a former 5-star, and they are somewhat counting on him. I don't know how much of a consideration Mike Norvell would give to making this a true competition, but it doesn't seem to be that.
Yeah, that's a good question. We talked about that a little bit the other day. How good would Brock Glenn have to play to beat out a DJ Uiagalelei in this camp? Well, he'd have to be like, he would have to really beat him out. If we get into that conversation of Brock Glenn beating out DJU, it might be controversy. It would be like the top news of every college football show. But I'm here for it. That would be an awesome problem to have. I don't think you have an issue. I don't think you ever have an issue where DJU, his level drops, or he isn't able to play at a high enough level that it's like a problem. Like, oh shit, excuse my language, DJU isn't going to work out. We got to figure out if we can get Brock Flaherty. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy could go out there and compete for a Heisman this year. How do we keep him off the field? Type deal. Jameis Winston, when he was at Florida State, he redshirted as a freshman, and then EJ Manuel was gone. It was his job. You had Jacob Coker there to battle with, but they didn't bring Jacob Coker in as a transfer. If they had brought Jacob Coker in off the street, in this new climate with his last year eligibility to be the starting quarterback at Florida State, who knows how that all would have went. It might have been for the best. Who knows? Maybe we win a national title with Coker and then with Winston the next year. But I digress. No, Brock Glenn, the rest of that quarterback room, it's a complete different level than it was last year. As you rounded out, DJU, just spent a bunch of time talking about him. I've spoke at length. I'm super excited. I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the nation by the time it's all said and done. I just don't know what Mike Norvell needs to show you more. you go back to ASU, every year at Memphis, both years here at Florida State that he's had a quarterback, going into the season, and the stats, they're all very, very similar. It leaned a little bit more rushing more than any other quarterback he had with Jordan Travis, just because that's what he had. Had to really leverage that offensive line with his running ability, with the running backs, things of that nature. Um, this year, Florida State has an offensive line as we kind of move forward here to protect DJU and whoever it is back there at quarterback to a level that is just so far and above what we've seen in our time here. It's hard for people, I guess, to kind of wrap their heads around it because it's a lot of the same guys. It's not like Florida State never had that class with 4 or 5-star linemen. But what they've done is develop an offensive line into one that is just senior laden. We've got 8, 10 seniors in a rotation of an offensive line with, we got 3 tackles of 2,000 plus snaps. We're 6 deep at guard with guys, all 6 of them better than anything we had on the team the first 3 years Mike Norvell was here. I love Dylan Gibbons. It's a different set of athletes lining up there at guard when you look at Keandre Jones, TJ Ferguson, the different guys, Richie Leonard coming over from UF, a guy who is absolutely perfect for the scheme Florida State runs, that likes pulling all those guards and running GT counter and all those things. So yeah, super excited. The young guy, Trevor Jackson, has came in. He'll probably be a scholarship player. Mike Norvell's always playing 3D chess, so you thought that was weird. You bring in a blue chip PWO, and then you find out, oh, we're going to 105 scholarships. So I imagine as soon as that goes through, you're going to have Trevor Jackson on scholarship. Luke Krummenhoek, I saw you guys talked about if he could possibly win that backup role from Brock Glenn this year, or what would happen next year. I think fat chance of it this year, as far as Luke Krummenhoek, beating out Brock Glenn for the backup role. But that 2025 quarterback competition between Luke and Brock, yeah, that will be a ton of fun. The future is extremely, extremely bright for Florida State at the quarterback position and the offensive line position. It's all seniors this year. It's all seniors. But they've been able to really stack that young talent and really start to build it. I'm sure a lot of those young guys like Andre Otto, Lucas Simmons, those guys are going to get a lot of reps. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, offensive line and quarterback, elite play from the offensive line. And I'll say you get at least above average play from DJU. I don't see him at any rate doing any worse than he's ever done. And I'm pretty sure you're going to see the best year he's ever had in college football. Mike Norvell, just in the way he runs his offense with all the different running backs and things at wide receiver, it's just going to be a lot of fun to watch. You got also the fact of how the schedule lines up, I think is really big for DJU. With him, he doesn't have a year to build up towards a run. He's just jumping in here 1 year kind of, whatever you want to call it, 1 year rental. Really has a month and a half to get the wheels going before you play Clemson, North Carolina, Notre Dame, these guys. So the sky's the limit. The closer we get to the season, the higher my hopes are for this team, for the offense, for the defense, all the way around.
The other thing with DJ that comes to mind that I failed to mention when I was talking about watching him play a lot of football at Clemson was he had 2 extraordinary performances in relief of Trevor Lawrence in 2020. One was a game at Notre Dame when he passed for more yardage than had ever been thrown for in that stadium. The other was a game where, of course, that was the COVID year. Trevor Lawrence didn't pass COVID protocol just 10 or 12 hours before the game. So suddenly he's in the game as the starting quarterback against Boston College. They go down like 28-6 in that game. He leads them back for a victory. So his 2 performances, his first year, were extremely positive performances. But then he's suddenly the starter. He's the starter. Lawrence is off as the number 1 pick. And that first game of the season, they play one of the best defenses we've seen in the last 20 years of college football. They played Georgia, and he didn't play well, but it's hard to tell how well he played because he had guys in his lap every play. So I don't know that he didn't play that well. He didn't have a chance to try to play well. That was one of those games where, man, they scored 3 points and Georgia just blew up every play practically. So they almost never had a chance to run a play. And sometimes for a first year starter, you come out of the gate with a performance like that, and you're hearing footsteps, maybe, or maybe it's just not a great setup for the rest of your season. And obviously, he didn't come through the way he was expected to at that point. But man, he's a much different player today. You know, you're looking at 2021, 24, 3 years later, he's still a starting quarterback in college football. He's got a ton of experience under his belt. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it'll
it's
be
not
interesting
easy.
with Mike Norvell's skill set in this area to see what he can do with him.
Yeah, it's not easy to win 10 games in college football, much less at Clemson when you've got guys like teams like Georgia and things like that, Florida State on the schedule. Go look at what games, in 2022 and 23. Go look at what games DJU lost at Clemson and Oregon State, and then go look at the games that Trevor lost. Go look at the stats. Go look all the way around it. Clemson, the coaching staff, everybody was just kind of like, no, 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 the ride's not over. It can't be us. It can't be the team. It can't be all falling apart. It's just DJU. It's DJU. We're gonna get, but the way we do it in seniority, he should be the. Dabo had like this internal struggle going there. Putting Klubnik over DJU and that whole situation, kind of pushing him out, that went against everything that program is about. It was really kind of nasty. It was never spoken. Everybody kind of took the high road. But it's like everything that I've heard Clemson about, oh, we stay in house, we fix things, yada, yada. No, he was the scapegoat. You say it how it is. And when he left, it didn't happen. Klubnik didn't come in and get better. It was the same thing that you got from going from Trevor Lawrence to DJU. Oh, yeah, Klubnik was great in relief. But when it became his show, we saw it. We saw the blowout against Duke. They went 8-4. They lost to Miami for the first time, in a decade or whatever. It's been really tough beans. So yeah, I'm all in on DJU. And again, Norvell's history speaks for itself. I'll put it this way: I think he's better than any quarterback he had at Memphis. So in that time there, and also this is the best supporting cast that he's had around him by a long shot, in my opinion. We can talk about wide receivers a little bit. That's what a lot of people are worried about when it comes to him. But this offense is not going to be all about 4 wide outs and go routes every single play. Like I've talked about, this is going to be probably the best running game that in the ACC, the best running game Florida State's had in a long, long time. They're going to run it a ton. They're going to hit a lot of wide receiver screens, short stuff. And then they're going to hit play action. They're going to hit stuff over the top of people's head. They're going to really, really play to his skill set. They're going to play to Malik Benson's skill set, who has been the guy they brought in to be wide receiver 1. There was a little bit of a scare. He got dinged up in the spring, so we didn't see a ton of him in the spring game. But all accounts coming out of practice are that Malik Benson and that speed is legitimate. Like, he is that guy. He's been making some spectacular plays. Everything I've heard, how everything's going, he's locking down that wide receiver 1 position, and Florida State fans are going to be really, really happy with what they get out of him. Hakeem Williams, the true sophomore, top 100 receiver, coming out last year. Big guy, 6'3", 200 something pounds, really starting to come along. He's my pick to win that other starting outside receiver role before it's all said and done. And he's right on track. He's done really, really well. You've got the senior guys and Darion Williamson and Kentron Portier, who they're really kind of steadying, kind of presences there in that room. I don't expect a ton out of Darion Williamson. He's kind of always in the right spot, but he has just had an issue with drops over his career. But we'll see how much burn he gets, but it'll definitely be good for that room. Portier, on the other hand, he could be he could have a chance to hold down that starting role as Hakeem comes into his own as the season goes through. He just has to stay healthy. Kentron Portier is a guy who really has all the skill in the world, has made some really good plays throughout his career. So you hope for him in his senior year and his final chance that he can put it together and have a really good year. As far as those outside guys go, you've got LaWayne McCoy and you've got Elijah Moore, who have come in as true freshmen and just absolutely lit up camp. Everything coming out of camp about those 2 guys has been amazing. Usually when you get true freshmen coming in a year like last year, we were a little bit more loaded at wide receiver. They're going to get a couple reps in there with the 1s and 2s, but then if they make a mistake, whatever the case may be, all right, it's off to the back of the line, back with the freshman. over to the freshman only scrimmage, whatever the case may be. This year, the word out of camp is no. They're, if they get something wrong, run it again. They may run it 6 times. But those guys are getting legitimate reps in the 3 deep there and making plays on top of plays. You talk about 6'4", 200-pound beast of a man there, and Elijah Moore. And then the other one, Lawayne McCoy, I believe he's more 6'2", 6'3", more, of your kind of prototypical wide receiver number 2. So, yeah, really, really excited there as far as outside. Inside in the slot, you've got our guy, Ja'Kai Douglas, who was kind of the star of the Georgia game, the one kind of spark plug we had actually playing in that game. I expect him to do great things there in the slot for us. We've got, who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting somebody pretty big here. Anyway, a lot of good wide receivers.
Jaylen Brown?
Jaylen Brown, yes. That's exactly who I was thinking of. Jaylen Brown was a top 100 wide receiver with Hakeem Williams in that same class, that 2023 class. Went to LSU. He was somebody that Florida State really wanted. You end up getting him after 1 year at LSU, and he's another guy who can maybe do some of those plays, come and spell Malik Benson, run some of those go routes. Has really, really great speed and an elite skill position guy. Talent up and down the roster. We just don't have those jersey names. We don't have the set, guy that everybody knows going into the season, but we've got more talent. And this is a common theme across this entire roster. There's more talent in the wide receiver room than there has been in years and years and years. We just don't have the established name quite yet, but make no doubt, it'll step up. Somebody's going to step up. And also the tight end room with Kyle Morlock. He seems to have made all the steps necessary. The clumsiness, the kind of drops and off timing and things that we saw last year, a little bit of precautiousness there in his part on like blocking and things like that as he learned and went along. That's kind of just all went away. He's kind of like a veteran there in the locker room. There have been a couple highlight plays that have been caught on camera and put out on the public. So Morlock absolutely killing it in camp, along with the freshman Landon Thomas. I'm not sure if he's been dinged up or not. Haven't had quite as much out on him. But when he has played, it's elite traits. People have been really surprised by him. But the real big story at tight end out of camp is Amari Williams, the true freshman. He was a 5-star in the 25 class, moved to the reclassified to 2024 and was knocked down to a 4-star DN/tight end. Really looking like he might end up finding his home at tight end. They've talked about playing in both sides of the ball. But most of all the information we've got out of camp has been him lining up at tight end and just making grown man plays, like making plays we haven't seen from a tight end in years and years. And again, as a true freshman. But yeah, really, really probably make a mark there as a true freshman at tight end. There's a ton of skill to be excited about. There's no dearth of talent. There's just a dearth of guys that will make your preseason award list just because they already had the production from the previous year. But wide receivers, they have to get that production somehow. It doesn't come. Is it the chicken or the egg? Okay, guys. Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman are gone. We got plenty of talent coming through, and I promise you, it's the best talent that JU's had around him in his time.
So, George, when you run all that down, yeah, the wide receiver room is deep and talented, but there's just nothing coming back in regards to production. So, between Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, they were the 2 biggest pass catchers, and Jaheim Bell at tight end was number 3. So I see Porter caught 6 balls. Ja'Kai Douglas caught 14. But this is where you got to trust Mike Norvell and the coaching staff because there's a lot of development that goes on. Guys can be completely different players, especially very talented players that can take that kind of coaching, that kind of direction through an entire workouts, off-season winter workouts, spring practice, fall practice, all that, and come out and be ready to break through. The other part of this is, what is Mike Norvell known for? Well, he's known for transfer portal. You would think that if they needed a wide receiver or 2 in the transfer portal, if he didn't trust that room, he would have been in the transfer portal to get a wide receiver.
Yeah, facts. And look, it's fair. You can look at that. But at the same time, how many yards did Johnny Wilson have? in 2022.
Sure.
You know, how many yards? Keon Coleman had a pretty good season, but pretty comparable to the amount of stats Malik Benson had when he came in. You know, so it's kind of that chicken or egg thing. Yeah, there's nothing to point to as far as proven this guy, he's got all these yards, but the amount of young talent that you have there, you've got to be excited. There's a bit of trust there. It's got kind of one of those things. If you haven't been to a practice, if you haven't talked to somebody that's been, if you don't understand what's coming up, it's fair. It's fair to point at, but I guess that's what this show is for, to tell the people out there, don't worry, just because there aren't a bunch of numbers out there. You'll see them after this season. We'll look back and see what the stats look like.